call roll because we don't have any pieces of legislation, but this is a meeting to discuss with the clerk and the CFO, council operations. This is the operations component, and then we'll have the budget component as we always do in February. So, clerk, do you want to start us off?
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. To start you off, I will say that the staff of council advances the work of council through 11 clusters. And those clusters strive to work effectively and collaboratively and represent council professionally. I think I've gone through them before, but I'm going to run through them real quick, and I will have an updated copy to forward to everyone after this, because I need to make some changes. So it's administrative services.
As you do that, clerk, if you could highlight folks that are new in positions, have been promoted.
Yes, yeah.
All that.
The administrative cluster, which does resolutions and scrolls, liquor licenses, with the retirement of Charlene Berry, Leah Short is now the chief legislative secretary and the cluster manager. Crystal Sanders, who was the receptionist, working in that same cluster, is now a legislative assistant and works on resos and scrolls under Leah. Archives deals with preservation of records. That cluster manager is Chuck Moxerin. And Archives, as you all know, is not located in City Hall. It's over at 205 St. Clair. Communications, they're charged with getting council's message out. There was a change of staff from there, which I'll go through at the end. Daryl Torbert kind of has his foot in there a little, but he's really now the strategy development cluster. Finance oversees the council's budget, and that's headed by the chief financial officer sitting next to me. Human resources, with the retirement of Carrie Rentz, right now, Vikita, the CFO, is also doing that. We do have a person for that position that will be starting in about 3 weeks. Fiscal discretionary funds works with all of the council's discretionary funds, CDBG, well, no, I'm sorry, not CDBG, casino funds, NEF dollars, those things. I said human resources. Information technology, which is John Rosewell. John works to keep council up to date on licenses, computers, and did I miss something beside licenses and computers?
IT infrastructure.
Right, IT infrastructure. Legal counsel is with, I'm sorry, I'll go back to that. Legal counsel is our 2 attorneys. They co-cluster, manage their cluster. Policy research, they staff all of the committees. They do have a new person in that cluster. Strategy development is, there are 2, it's the newest of the clusters, and there are 2 people in there. I left out, in administrative services, I left out the newest person there, Kelly Edmonds Salvatore. That is fairly quickly what the 11 clusters are.
Okay.
And I will send around again. I left off, a couple of these have changed since the last time I did them in early September. So I'll make sure that every member of council gets a copy of these updates.
Okay. And clerk, in the research cluster, Mr. Tytron has been promoted, is that correct?
Yes,
Can you
thank
speak to
you,
that?
thank you, yes. Joe Tytron is the Director of Research.
Great, okay. Okay. Our CFO, any comments, questions, concerns?
Just ready for questions.
Okay, so I'll just kick off on a couple things I've heard, and then we'll open it up to the table. And again, we'll do the budget of this in February, but this, I think the focus of today should be needs, wants, questions, concerns, and then we can incorporate that into a budget prior to February. So a couple things on that I've received feedback from. Number one is a constituent management system. Councilwoman House Jones has really been focusing on that and kind of creating a CMS system that members could elect to use. It wouldn't, I mean, obviously be required, but encouraged for folks to use to track constituent complaints, but then also other trends that we're seeing in our offices. So for example, I use the example of the cable bill. While that's not a city issue technically, it's good to know if people's cable bills are going up, it's impacting our residents. So a CMS system, we'll be taking a look at that internally and, you know, figuring out what that cost would be, what type of vendors are out there, and then also importantly ensuring that whatever it is doesn't conflict with 311. You want something that speaks to 311 so that you don't have just two totally separate
Right.
systems that aren't cooperating with each other. We don't want to reinvent 311. That's not the point. So I don't know if you want to speak to that at all, or
So, in terms of the constituent services management software, if you all have some platforms that that research and that communications can look at to vet, and the IT manager can vet, then that would be perfect.
Yep.
Then we could move forward. But now that we know that 311 won't meet all of the check marks that you all need, that gives us the ability or the more, you know, to go ahead and move with the other platform.
go ahead, Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to ask, can you speak to what that process is so that members have some idea of what the timeline might look like?
So what'll happen is once we get preferably, we'll get 2 or 3 vendors that would be compatible with our current software system or 311 system. Once we get those, we will then get legislation and then contract with them. Preferably, if they're already on state terms, then they've already been vetted. Otherwise, that's why we like the 3. Then it'll take us to getting that through the system, the Advantage system. One of the things that we have to be mindful of, the clerk sent out final dates for 2024. So the system is about to shut down, so we won't be able to encumber funds. But if we get that in before they shut down, which I don't think we'll be able to, it'll be the 1st of January before we can at least contract. That would give us that November, that December to vet, get them in as a vendor, and make sure all of the paperwork behind the scenes is done, and then we'll be ready to go.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think that timeline makes sense. I don't think anyone's expecting to have this online before the end of the year. I mean,
Yeah.
but I think we can have those conversations, and there was an initial conversation between Councilwoman House Jones, myself, and Director Crow. And they do have some ideas, so I think
Okay.
we'll be able to put that together. Why don't, I'll bring up one other thing and then I'll open it up. The other thing that folks have expressed too is the microphone system, both in chambers and here, updating that. So in speaking with the clerk, she's going to engage with the tech vendors to investigate options to replace and upgrade the microphones in this room as well as in the chambers. In the chambers, sometimes they're missed, there's missing ones, things like that. So looking at an entire audit of the microphone system in here. We recently got cameras, screens, so the next step, as well as new cameras in chambers. So the next step would be to look at the audio, so. All right, with that, I will open it up to any comments, questions. And again, this isn't budgetary, this is functional. All right, so I've got, hold on, Star Polensek.
Put me down, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, 1 second. Councilman Richard Starr.
I told y'all, Councilman Kerry McCormick said I'm his favorite for real, y'all.
He is my favorite.
This is the first time he put me first.
He's my favorite. He's my favorite Ward 5 councilman.
You like that one, did you?
I don't want to get in trouble no more. First I'd like to say thank you, clerk, as well as Ms. Diggers for all the work that y'all do. I know sometimes it's challenging dealing with 17 ideas, plus another 17 different executive assistants, as well as the additional staff that we have in our office. So I definitely appreciate y'all for always having open mind and always answering questions, but also giving more context and supporting documents, which is very important when dealing with some stuff. But I definitely wanted to put out there increasing our expenses. Our $1,200 is low, but I think we're looking at possibly increasing it to $2,000 to $2,500. I also wanted to put something out
Expense accounts.
there that I learned and spoke with Columbus Council on some of the things that they've made changes as far as expense. I believe having council put aside $1,200 and get reimbursed for things is kind of outdated. So I was looking at different things that I've experienced and worked with previously before I got on council at Boys and Girls Club. We had a credit card system in place in which you have $2,500, or some cards had $1,000, depending on your level in the organization. And what happens is you have a certain threshold that you can use for your department to get things done. I believe with my $2,500 card, from $500 to $1,000, it was something related to the sports department, whether it's just getting supplies, getting activities, or anything that a club may need, I'm able to do that. But I had a monthly report that I had to turn in with the extra credit cards, receipts, invoices of what I've done. If it was something that was more than the threshold of $500 or that $1,000, I had to get authorization from my direct supervisor, in which they were asked for different documents first. Or if it's something that's more than $2,500, they would then have to go to their supervisor, and then they would have to get a credit card increase. So what I'm saying is, could we look at a credit card expense system that we can have set up, but also it'd be something that is controlled through our CFO or anything like that, because all of our stuff went through there, but we had to do the reporting similar to some of the reporting that I see we do, from making sure you have the flyer, additional supporting evidence, whether it's invoice, credit cards, receipts, food, things that you're doing just so it can make it more streamlined process, because I believe that $1,200, or even if we increase our expense to $2,000, setting that money aside for one person is essentially setting a check aside from your household and then doing reimbursement. I know Columbus has a credit card system in place as well from their council, and one of the things they have is stuff that goes through the clerk or goes through their staff to make sure they have things in place. I can't give you all the facts of what they have, but I know they do have a system, because I spoke to their council president as well, and we had some different conversations about it, and I'm just trying to look at some different ways to be more robust on getting things for our residents.
And Mr. Chairman, can I comment to that on that
Councilman
point?
Starr, Councilman Jones has requested a point.
No problem.
Mr. Chairman, to further back up Mr. Starr, it is very difficult receiving $1,200 a month, given the fact that there has been pricing change, and this $1,200 that was allocated for council was 35 years ago. So it's been 35 years and we haven't had not one increase. And so my suggestion is, $3,000 versus $2,500. We have bigger constituent issues and needs in our neighborhood like never before. And we need to be, and then having the resources on the front end versus pulling it out of your pocket and being poor and waiting for reimbursement is a lot better, quicker. I think we need to get up to a more modern standard dealing with it.
Thank you.
My humble suggestion is $2,500 is a modest, piece, but at the end of the day, we really have a lot of needs. And like, I have a ward office, and a lot of my constituents want to be able to walk in, talk to their council person, get in and have conversations, and it's just really encumbersome the way the system is now, currently fixed.
Yep.
And I just wanted to add that piece, and I yield, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Starr.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to my colleague, Joe Jones. Yes, and I think with that system, we can have oversight, which we know what's actually been done. And then also we could put things in place. Say, for instance, a council member is not following the rules. That credit card gets shut down, now you don't have that expense no more. Because that right there would mean you have to obey by the checks and balances of what's in place to help you take care of your neighborhood. So therefore, if we have it as something you're doing in your block club or you're doing something in your neighborhood, that can help you out without you having to say, I need to just set money aside for my own family or household where I can be able to use a credit card system, and then we can have a certain threshold of things that we do get authorization and approval over. I definitely am going to write some stuff up and possibly send it over so we can see and then make some different changes, but I want to work on that.
Thank you, Councilman. So just logistically, quickly, let's break it down into two. One, credit card, two, expense account. I'll note expense accounts would require an ordinance, which is
Codified.
possible, but
Yes.
just that would require a legislative change. But Clerk, if you could respond to the 2 points, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, to the council member. The reimbursement, the reimbursement right now is in the codified ordinances, so it would require legislative change, which you all can decide if that's what you want to do. Credit card system, I'm going to defer to the CFO. I would think that that would be much more difficult, if at all possible, to have 17 different credit cards.
That would be very, it wouldn't be logistical. I would have to look at how the others do it and how many members of council that they have. But that would have to be something that we would have to sit down and vet as a group, so that we could understand and get to one point or one consistent place. Because you may want 2,000, Councilman Jones wants 3,000, Councilwoman Santana may want 2,500. So we have to get to one place because you have 17 different ideas, and we have to get to a majority. Now, in terms of a credit card, there's a lot of times that we kick things back because they're not according to what we have, that IRS rules, and that what we already have set aside for our rules. So it's going to be more of a bit of a challenge for the staff that we have now. So, but we would have to talk about that. We'd have to see the other models.
And Mr. Chairman, to the council member, council does have a credit card, which is how we travel, but an individual credit card for each member of council doesn't seem practical. What would seem more practical is if you all decide to increase what the monthly reimbursement amount is through legislation.
Okay, thank you. And we can, Councilman, to your point in Columbus, we can also reach out to Columbus to see how they operate it, just have a better idea. I'm getting my Slovenian uncle over here. All right, Councilman Starr, you have the floor.
Yes, and I'm open to just exploring different options. No, I do not believe one model works or one model versus the other model. Just trying to figure out how we can get more, what they say, modernized on how we're doing things. Because like I said, if you're doing reports with credit cards already, or you're doing cash flow, I believe cash and different things and doing stuff is a little bit different from where we're living at now. And I believe through a credit card system, you are able to track what the actual thing someone is doing. So if they're doing things that they're not supposed to be doing based on what the ordinance has allowable usages, similar to some of the things that we are allowed to expense, that person then lose their privilege of being able to use that expense. So I believe it will caution and keep people afloat, but also it will give our CFO and our team actual the swipage data to be able to say I pull and can be able to look and see exactly where things are going. Now, when I'm talking about Boys and Girls Club, this was when Boys and Girls Club was a $3 million organization. So and when I look at how much we have budget or what our department is, I believe is a system that can work. And on top of that, at that time, they had about 70 to 80 employees. So it's a robust system, and a chief resource office department had about 1 or 2 staff people. So I definitely want to explore just to see what we could do off the record, so we could just get something that's consensual to what council members would like to see, like our CFO said, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Council President Griffin.
So just on that point, I am interested in what they're looking at in Columbus, so we can make sure that we make that connection and see if there's more efficient ways to do this. I also hear Councilman Jones' point about making sure that we have, that we haven't raised this increase or made this increase in a while. I would like to see if there's a model that we could use to attach inflation onto when the last time we made the increase compared to now, so that it's based on real inflationary numbers and not just a number that we arbitrarily pick. So if we could really have inflationary numbers to show when is the last time we passed legislation with this amount, and what are the inflationary numbers. I want to make sure that the public understands this too. A lot of this money is money that council members put out themselves and get reimbursed. So I want to clarify so that the public doesn't think that this is just something that we're just, even though it is a taxpayer dollars that we're getting reimbursed with. These are dollars that people have to put out in order to get back. But I do want to say this. These are taxpayer dollars. And whenever we have taxpayer dollars and taxpayer systems, even though there may be more flexibility in the nonprofit or private sector, there are government accounting regulations and statutes that we have to really make sure that we abide by. So I want everybody to understand that even though a lot of these are great ideas, I actually did talk to the law department or folks about potentially increasing the monthly stipend, but I want it to be based on science. I want it to be based on sound inflationary practices. And I also want us to remember that even though if we look at Columbus's system and make sure that it's statutorily correct, then that's something we can consider. But I do want to make sure that this council knows, not this session, but the last session had a complete audit that was ordered by the former council president. The regulations and things that we have in place have been vetted by an independent outside accounting firm. So I'm a little bit leery when we want to try to change our policies when we just came up out of a major challenge in the last council when a council member unfortunately had misappropriation of dollars. And we had this accounting group come in place so that we could put systems in place so that we could make sure that we wouldn't run into that again. So the rules that we've made aren't just arbitrary rules that this council just put together. I want to make sure that we understand a few things. Government accounting regulations and that we have to abide by, as well as making sure that you know that we did have an accounting firm that did give a complete audit of our financial practices, and we followed all of those recommendations. And to be quite honest, when we did that, there were only 2 council members, even unintentionally. Most people, there were small things, but they even cleaned up some of the small things that came out through that auditing process. And when that report came out, the public was incensed because it looked like a lot of people were not abiding by the practices. So a lot of work went into trying to keep this council disciplined fiscally. And I know people don't always like me to be the bearer of bad news to try to say we have to have some kind of discipline or restraint, but I want us to think about that because at the end of the day, these are taxpayer dollars, and we can't just do things without really making sure that we have some real thought process. But I do agree we need to look at increasing the allocation, and then we, based on inflation, and then also we will make sure that we look at that Columbus system so that we could see how it's set up and how it's looked. Because I don't think what the councilman is saying that he wants 17 different credit cards. What he's saying is that is it a different way to expense and maybe alleviate the possibility for council members that would have to put money up front out of their pocket. But those are things that we need to really try to consider. But I will tell everybody that at the end of the day, these are not things that we should do in a knee-jerk reaction. We really need to make sure that we are very, very disciplined. You guys asked me to be the council president, or I asked you to be your council president, so that we can make sure that we have some level of institutional discipline. So I just want to make sure that everybody recognizes that when some people tell you no, or some people say, hey, let's revisit this, it's not that we're trying to squash your idea. We just want to make sure that we're in line and compliant with everything that we need to, because my job is also to protect you. That's all I want to do, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Council President. I've got Plensik, Harsh, and then Joe Jones. Councilman Plensik. I'm sorry, did you?
Yes.
1 second, Councilman Plensik.
Yes, I just want to make sure we say for the record, even with that audit, there were actual findings of what people did that you would deem should never been allowed. So therefore, if we're going to talk checks and balances, it might be a system that we need to already have in place. What I'm asking for is stop taking money out of our household in order for us to technically use it for our residents. If it's taxpayer dollars, well, let's have a more modern system in place to allow us to get those dollars to the residents and the community. One of the things that you have a challenge is based on what one may interpret it as versus what you may interpret it as. What I may need to do, use money for, that's taxpayer dollars for them to use in a neighborhood might not be the same elsewhere. So having a system in place where you can be able to get things done as opposed to using your own front-loaded cash. You can use a prepaid card. You can use a credit card. There's so many different things that we can do, but the first thing we say is, we got to research it, but then next you know, it's never anything that comes back until I do it myself. So I was trying to bring something to the table that I know has worked, has been around for years. You know, some of these, like I said, Boys and Girls Club been around since 1800s. And they're not doing stuff the same thing way they were doing it in the 1800s. They're doing things different modern organizations work and different government works in doing it. And for the record, Columbus credit card system that they have has been out for a year that they've been doing it. So they're opening up as well, and I just want to make sure we have an open-minded process and it don't be something we just talk about at the table, but also look at it broadly off the record.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Plensik.
Thank you, Thank you, Mr. Chairman, honorable colleagues, and to the staff, clerk. I'm the only one here that's left from when the expense accounts were structured as they were. And they were structured in an effort to try to give somewhat of a cushion to the members in their interaction with neighborhood groups and organizations, because we found that that council members were constantly being asked to support different things in the community, events at parks, playgrounds, neighborhood organizations, et cetera. So the expense account was set up, and then as a result, and then again, as we know, there were some people, and it was very effective. I think it was only like 2 or 3, maybe that, in the day, who really disrespected the process. And as a result, we all know, there were actions that had to be taken by the body with us retaining outside counsel and working with IRS to structure. So the forms that we have today are a result of that interaction with IRS and with the outside law firm, and I can't even recall anymore who it was. But those members who were engaged in that process obviously are long gone, thank goodness. So the question is, and again, I think it's a reasonable discussion and debate, because Joe indicated 35 years ago, and I'm thinking it might even be longer than that. And so today, if you were to rent a ward office, specifically a standalone ward office, most of that would go for that today, or maybe all of it would go for that. And so the challenges were, And a lot of us over the years, we had partnerships or interactions with local development corporations. That usually is not the case anymore. I can remember I had a ward office. I was paying $300 a month for that ward office, okay? And I had a whole floor.
How long ago was that?
That was a long time ago of a building. Those days are long gone.
Yep.
Those days are long gone. And the landlord was even paying for the heat. I mean, that's even better yet. So those days are long gone. So I think that's reasonable. And I'm hoping maybe the Personnel Committee and the Rules Committee can take a look at that as we go forward. But my specific question is, of all the staff members we have in place, have all of them been officially legislated in where there's been a roll call?
Mr. Chairman, to the member of council, all but the newest.
Okay.
The two newest.
Okay. So everyone on staff now, there's been a roll call on them by members of council?
That's correct.
Okay. And I think that's important because a lot of the new members might not know that. Every one of the staff members has to be confirmed by council. And that's been the rule, historic rules here, that because we operate differently than the rest of City Hall, that when employment is offered and then after what is the, Madam Clerk, what is the temporary time or the probationary time? What
On the
is that?
point, Mr. Chairman, because I'm confused.
Hold on one second, Councilman.
Yeah, I have a.
A quick point of clarification.
No, just I'm going to ask Mike Polensek. Can you explain the roll call, how it's supposed to work? Because
Any employee that is hired by council after they go through their probationary period of time, which is, again, I don't know how long that is.
There isn't a specific
Yeah.
probationary period. It's just when the names are submitted
Then
to
there,
the
okay. See, I thought there was a specific time, but there has to be an actual roll call on the employee. In other words, members of council have to confirm those employees. And believe it or not, in many, many, many years ago, there were times that an employee was not confirmed because there was just concerns or questions or whatever the case may raise. But anyone who works for council has to be confirmed by the body.
And when was the last time we did that, if I may ask?
Oh, I can't, I would have to ask the
Yeah,
clerk.
I don't know
Yeah.
off the top of my
Yeah,
head.
yeah.
But that is law?
But I'm sorry, Mr.
It's the
Chairman, to
rules.
the council member.
It's the rules.
It's the rules.
It's all but the two newest.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. So I think that's important for us to remember, because I say that again, when positions are open, or there are positions available, again, the rule used to be that all members were notified of those openings, so in turn, we can put that word out in our neighborhood, because maybe we always tried to make sure that the staff was not only reflective of the city, but also was reflective of the ward, the number of wards that were in the city, where we try to make sure we have staff from all sections of the city. So I just want to make sure that continues to be the process and the rule, and that roll calls are properly done when warranted. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. So Clerk, if we could prepare the list of folks that have not been roll called to maybe at the next Finance Committee meetings.
Will do.
Councilman Chris Harsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to comment on these two subjects that are up here. I like our current methods. I think CFO Stigger's job is to keep me out of jail. And I appreciate it when I bring you something, you say, I cannot reimburse you for that. Because that's good for me to know. And I would hate to find out after I've already charged it to a credit card that I can't be reimbursed for that because now we got a problem. I think the other issue at hand is that we all wear the jacket of every member of council. And when one member of council abuses the law, misuses taxpayer funds, we all wear that forever. The reason politicians have such a bad reputation in American society is because politicians have been taking advantage of taxpayer money for, I guess, centuries now. And we can't shake it. It doesn't go away. All we can do is look at right now and try to prevent it from ever happening again. And I appreciate what President Griffin just said. There was a big internal audit a couple years ago, and they came up with new methods and new systems to make sure that this doesn't happen again, and none of us ever end up in the place where some of our former colleagues are. And I know that individually, I have no doubt about anyone's ability to follow the law. But if we open up the door for somebody to accidentally walk out and do something they shouldn't do, we have to acknowledge that we opened that door for them. So let's keep the door closed. I like the systems we have in place. Now, if we want to up the amount, okay, have that conversation. But I think that it's a good system. It keeps us in check. And I think that we can tell the public that we have good systems in place to ensure that nobody on city council is misusing taxpayer dollars. And I think that's vitally important for us and for every elected official in the country. The next thing is, I would like to caution people about some of the software programs that are designed towards efficiency. I worked at a place where they wanted to bring in, I think it was called Workforce. Has that, everybody heard of Workforce? Is that one of them? Salesforce, thank you, Salesforce. And it was going to solve every problem in the organization, and every department was going to be able to use it, and it ended up costing like $1 million and no one used it. And I think the reason was because everybody sort of has their own internal organizational methods that work for them, but we're not all the same. Some people are, well, I don't need to list them all. People just do things differently. I think what we might want to consider that might actually be more helpful to some of us would be training on organizational systems. Like, I've been using Zero Inbox for well over a decade. I walk past some of y'all and I look down at your computers and I see like 1,000 unread emails, and I don't know how you sleep at night. Like, I can't figure that out. Like, I have 0 unread emails multiple times a day and have for a decade, like well over a decade. I've got 2 emails, no unread emails, 2 email addresses. And that's a system that you learn how to do, and it helps you keep on your toes. Like, do people understand the maximum use of Microsoft Inbox? Like, do we understand that you can flag things, that you can go back and look at your flagged items separately? Do we understand that there are organizational methods in the stuff we have that some people just honestly, I guarantee you, of the 17 of us, some people do not know they can flag something and then go back and look at all their flags. Someone doesn't know that. Maybe having more conversations about the tools at our disposal could help some of us learn about these. You know, Microsoft is old, but it's really good, and not everybody maximizes it. So I think there may be other things we can do as well. I would hate to see us get in this big system that like 3 people use or 4 people use. And that's just food for thought. I don't know where I'm going with that. But all in all, I appreciate the work that council staff does. I think y'all are really good at what you do. And yeah, that's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman Harsh. Appreciate that. All right, and I've got to run in a couple minutes. Council Member Moore is going to take over for me. I've got Councilman Joe Jones is last on my list, unless there's anybody else that wants to speak. Oh, you are? What do you want to get? You said what you said. Stuff? All right, hold on.
Well, I messed where I come right on.
Councilman Joe Jones, you're up, my man.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rebecca, you want to get your purse over here? Thank you, Inez.
And Councilwoman Moore is going to take over as chair.
Because I think I'm the only remaining member of the Operations Committee, just to clarify. Yeah. Councilman Joe Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. What is the percentage of our budget that we have compared to the overall budget? What is our percentage?
Can you clarify what you're asking, sir?
Okay. What is our percentage compared to the budget?
To the budget of the entire city?
The entire city of Cleveland.
That I don't know off the top of my head.
I was told that was less than 1%.
That's probably pretty accurate.
Okay. So we're looking at 0.9%, I mean, or less than 1% of the budget. And, you know, my colleague, Mr. Starr, opened up the proposition talking about the antiquated process of 35 years and not having an increase in our expense. I use my expense. Most of the time when I use my expense, going all the way back to almost 20-some years ago, maybe 26, 27 years ago, we had people in place that was telling us what we could use it for, what we couldn't use it for. We got a set of instructions. Those instructions are same as it was so many years ago. And the majority of the council members, even though I hear that you may have some folks that may misuse it, and in this particular case, I think the person was like a grandfathered in type scenario. And he was allowed to use his expense in ways that others were not allowed to use their expense. I remember sitting here at this table and wanted to have my own grass cutting program. And I wanted to have it just like his because it was serving the neighborhood. And the people from his community was always talking about the fact that they had these grass cutting services and why don't we have the same kind of grass cutting services to help our constituents too. I was told then by that administration that we ain't trying to expand or do anything that he's doing. We ain't trying to do that. We don't want you to do that. Look at other ways, means, and methods. So when it comes to checks and balances, as far as I'm concerned, our staff here on the council has done a wonderful job. At least in some cases, I may have had back and forth because some of the stuff that I've used my own personal dollars out of my pocket for could not be reimbursed for. I have had to use my funds to cut people's trees, trim stuff back. I've used my own landscaping system to cut and clean vacant lots where the city unfortunately couldn't perform those vacant lot cuts and the neighbors were having anniversaries or weddings or funerals and the city just would not respond. When it comes to office use, my stuff is boilerplate. Every month, I know what my expenses are. If I had a credit card, it would help me tremendously versus using the money out of my pocket and waiting to be reimbursed. So I do appreciate the president of Cleveland City Council and making the presentation that he made. Is very important to say the things he said and give a backdrop of it. But just wanted, out of clarification, let you know that it's a lot of financial hardship when you have other expenses you have to pay, and then you have to come up with being able to find the means to pay for things and then wait to be reimbursed. Or it's really an encumbering situation. Another issue is Mike Polensek talked about his rent. You know, if I had to go out in the actual market space and get a rent space where in this particular instance I was blessed to have the person break me the cuts that I have right now, it would cost me $2,500 right now to rent an actual space to have an office location. And that doesn't include, as he said, the electric, the gas, the water, the heat, and everything else that's involved with it. When you add that on top of it, then it almost makes it impossible to run an office in the modern times. And so we have been struggling in my neighborhood in Ward 1 to really fundamentally work to have the tools necessary, the computers available for the people to be able to make the phone calls, as well as to be able to utilize data sources. Harsh talked about, yeah, there's programs that are already there where we're using programs that are in place to help us with our data. But it'd be very pleasing to me if we did have a new kind of system that we could operate off of. I know that Joe Simperman had one of those kind of operations when he was in Cleveland City Council, and it was very efficient. He was able to pull up how many chuck holes, who called for chuck holes, what was the issues, what was the top percentages. The program I have right now won't give me that. But if I had one of those, and I know that there's various different programs on the market space. I've even looked at some of those programs. So I don't mind working with you to share with you some of those programs that we've looked at and the ones that we thought were not efficient, as well as the ones we thought that would be very efficient. And the ones we thought that would be very efficient, it was very cost prohibitive for us to be able to get it and be able to utilize it. Because again, it did not fit in our expense account because we would be over our expense account if we had to get that service there. And the way it was set up was the service was actually with the company. So you had to pay a fee for usage. So I just wanted to share that with you all, that getting our systems up, looking at what other cities are doing, best practices, so that we can be more efficient in our processes is something that we should be looking at constantly, how we improve, how we make our services better to the council people. Because one of the things that's difficult for me sitting here at the table is trying to get resources in my neighborhood, trying to get work done, under the gun, being stressed and stressed out half of the time. And when I come to the council and need assistance and help, I need to know that the people who are here working for us is working for our interests and trying to help us get the resources into the neighborhoods and push programming so that we can deal with the myriad issues. I don't need to tell anybody here at this table how bad it is out there in the neighborhoods. Sometimes it's so bad, I don't even, I'm fear faint out of my life to walk up and tell someone, please move your car off a vacant lot. Or have to go to deal with the stress of people having loud people playing music at their homes and the police hasn't shown up and they're calling you in the middle of the night. And so then you're going out there trying to deal with those issues. So the stress of the council, and I'll say it again, a council member is the first call of action. No one else thinks about anybody else to call. They don't call their state representatives and their state senators and their congressmen and all of these other people. These people don't get the same kind of calls we get. I know because I've asked them. And one of the things that's really deep is we're the Army, Navy, and the Marines in terms of servicing our people. And I think that's all across continental United States of America. If you're a council person, you're all levels of the armed forces trying to help your people. So I say that to simply say this. Having some flexibility in how we serve the various council members would be very helpful. In the fact of, say for an example, some council members may use newsletters. Some may not use newsletters. Some may have more of wanting to be more touch and hands-on in terms of communications. So we need to have the flexibility here to offer and provide that service to those council members who need it the most. Some members don't even use the newsletter at all. And some use their newsletters because they need to get the word out or they want to get a message out, let folks know something that's happening in the neighborhood where they ought to be. Most of the times, people and citizens I can only talk for Cleveland, they don't know what's happening. They don't know about the various programs that are available to help them. So when we send information out to have meetings, to talk about things that are impacting their life, for example, we're having a meeting on Thursday to talk about why such a huge increase in property taxes, because that's impacting the quality of life of our citizens. And we'll be talking about why there's a need to increase in Cleveland Public Power. Most citizens don't have a place to go to talk and vent their issues. So having these sessions for a council member like me to keep our community apprised of what's going on, we have to send out more information out, and we need help on that end. And so I ask you if we can do this. If we can increase so that we can do more of that, or can we use our other funds? Because I got to tell you, Mrs. Beasley and her group, hands down, have done an outstanding, wonderful job for me. Every time I go to them, they try to assist me and help me. So I would like to see if I can use some of my casino funds, because I'd prefer to have all of my stuff in-house where I can get it done and go through our same vendors. So that would be one of the questions I would have. Can we have that all done in-house? And how can we do that? Do we increase our budget to be able to have that capacity? Because that's important, for some of our members. How do we process that versus having to go in a different route?
Madam Chair, to the council member, I don't think you can supplement staff work by using casino funds or some other discretionary fund. But I'll let the CFO address that.
So yes, we wouldn't be able to necessarily supplement the staff that way. Are you asking for more newsletters? What are you asking for?
Right, so it's more production, it's more mailers and newsletters. being able to increase our newsletters, the communications to our people is like, in my neighborhood, the need of communications is significant. It is one of the things that the citizens are demanding for. And having the newsletters out there or having to make a decision between, a newsletter and a mailer has always been difficult and challenging for me for the last 8 years. So if we were able to use some of our discretionary funds to give to the council to be able to help us with this, with our own vendors, I think that would be easier for me, or how could we do that? Like, if some members don't use that pot of funds over there, can we do something in that way? I mean, I guess you'd have to look into it and research it and see if it's possible. Do we pass new rules, new laws to be able to make that happen? I mean, how do I get over something that's always been a problem for me?
So I think, Madam Chairperson, to the councilman, I think one of the first things we'd have to address is, what is it that you actually want? I can't go to the communications staff and say that we're going to increase the newsletters or the availability of newsletters for 17 members by 3 more or 4 more, or maybe you want 12 newsletters a year, but council president only needs the 3 or the 4. I would need more of a definitive thing to take to them to see if they are able to produce that. And also, we also have to remember that our staff is working for the whole 17. So they have certain timelines that they have, and, just working with them. But I would have to know what it is that you're asking for.
We can have that off key if that's okay.
Okay.
It's the same amount of newsletters, just mailers. So we want to be able to, and it wouldn't be no more production on the staff side, because the staff is already doing a great job. It would be using our existing vendors right now, our printing systems and our mailer systems. So it would be using our existing systems that we already have in place. So they've already produced the product. It would be then using our own systems that we already have in place. That would not be, because staff, we don't do printing. And we don't do mailing, right?
Correct.
Right. So then it would just be something that would be added onto the back end, because they're already doing the work.
Okay. Well, we can talk offline.
Okay.
You got a minute left, Councilman.
Well, is anybody else on the list?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, put me on the back list.
Okay, thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman House Jones.
Thank you, through the chair, to the team that's here today. There's a lot of thoughts. Well, can you all give me an idea about the status of the communications audit?
Through the chairperson to the council member, I will have to email that to you, only because from the fiscal standpoint, I just put that part through. I don't have that. That would be the communications cluster or the strategist cluster.
Okay. So I'm going to, through the chair to the team here, I'm not going to belabor a lot of stuff. I will offer a suggestion. We really need to come up with a process to, do a level of assessment, to take in people's feedback. That can be done in short order. I really think that the time, sometimes there's been a length in time in conversations where we haven't been able to close the loop on a couple of things. And so as we are heading into the upcoming new year, as we use this final corner to I would say maybe 3 different buckets. One, focusing on some of our policy processes to look at how we want to see policy, how community members can check policies, how council members need to be checking policies. That's one bucket. The second part would probably be, again, around the communications, because there have been varying conversations and being able to lift up best practices in any organization, government or non-government, to be able to communicate across the board, I think is paramount in this day and age. And then the last little bucket would probably be doing best practices around finance. There have been a lot of different conversations, but beyond what people personally want to do, I think we need to lift up best practices, right? And because there's a wide range, from what is able to be done in Beechwood, Ohio versus Columbus. I really just feel like in this day and age, we just really need to take out personalities of what individual council members want to do and uplift best practices. And I really think that would help to have us, to have some fruitful conversations, be able to hold ourselves accountable, and have a budget that I think would be reflective, where Cleveland City Council, as well as the public, can understand we are working and serving them in their best efforts. And then the last thing I will also, when it comes to like our finances and things of that nature, of really seeing if we can analyze what it will look like to incorporate however it will be. Right now, we have monthly expenses, but to incorporate that in the open data portal, that way we can reduce the need for public records requests. It will be all online. I think that is just a direction, because again, since it's for the public, it should be publicly available. People should not have to do public records requests. It is out there for the public to see. So that's just an offer and a suggestion of incorporating, and that's all the things we do, but specifically the finances, because that is a conversation where you will be able to readily see what people are doing, how it's being spent. You can have those checks and balances. If people may be stepping out, whatever the case may be, it will be publicly available, and people do not have to make a request. So I think that is really a direction that we should consider and go in, and figuring out how we can incorporate that.
Okay.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman. Councilman Kelly, who has left? No longer here. Oh, no. This is great. Everyone's coming in. Councilman Kelly, you are up.
Thank you. I just make a pitch stop.
Through my lady chair, I just had a comment. I just want to thank you. I've been here, probably the last one put on council, and I don't know if the word tutelage is a word, but you've given me a lot of it and helped, and everybody's been really helpful, and I just want to say thank you. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. That is a record-breaking contribution, so I appreciate that. I have put myself on the list because I have not had the chance to ask a couple questions yet. Councilwoman House-Jones, I was also going to ask about the communications audit, so thank you for already doing that. I do think that to the extent this is an operational review, it might be good to get that update. So I'm wondering, obviously that's communications is one of the clusters, but is there a scheduled output of that communications audit that we will be receiving prior to getting the council budget in the coming year?
So, Madam Chair, what I will do, we are having our cluster meeting this week, and I will, yes, Thursday, and I will actually follow up with the cluster managers to see where we are and where we're going, and I'll get that back to you all.
Madam Chair, I believe it's just, we just need to check with Daryl on the status of that.
Got it.
Report.
I really appreciate that. I know there was a lot of conversation about the expense accounts, or the reimbursement accounts. And I wanted to add one wrinkle in that I don't think anyone else had talked about, which is that for those of us who choose to supplement our EA's salaries, that comes out of that $1,200.
Correct.
And I've always really, I just want to put on the record, I think this is something I would happily say to you, everyone one-on-one, and I probably have, but I really struggle with having to choose between adequately paying my staff and providing services to the residents. We all use that money. Halloween's coming up. Okay, I got $300 worth of candy I gotta buy. I pay the rent for my block clubs that want to meet in a church basement. We use that account every year, and I do want to ask if we have done an assessment of our EA's salaries compared to other executive assistants around City Hall, especially given that our EAs do so much more than traditional scheduling. Have we compared our EA salaries to other EAs in City Hall?
Madam Chair, we have not.
Okay.
Typically, what we have done is left it up to the member of council. Though they all do make the same thing, we have talked most recently with Chairman McCormack about increases.
Yeah, I would fully support that. And maybe that's a good thing for an operational committee hearing in general. And I just want to plant a seed that maybe separately from the reimbursement, if a council member chooses to increase their EA's salary, if that could be done out of casino revenue rather than out of the expense reimbursement. I see some shaking heads, but I want to work through some solutions.
Can I, just a point? And
Yeah,
yeah.
well, go ahead.
So this is
Yeah.
another thing too, where
Yes.
human resources should not be based on objective measures. Like, we really need to look at best practices, salary history, because these are the things where people's biases go into play. I strongly would advise us to get some type of salary, human resources analysis to then provide a report, to have a level of to remove the subjectivity. This is an area
That's
where
right.
we need to look at best practices. This whole, and I really, and again, I cannot reiterate enough. Policies and practices should be designed around best practices. It is not based on people's individual personalities, because
That's
people are
right.
bringing very different experience into this
That's
place.
right.
Some people have a little bit more here, some people have a little bit different there. Regardless,
On that point,
the first
too.
thing, a part of our name is Cleveland. The first thing is Cleveland. It ain't Award 7, not Award 12, not Award 1. We have to come up with strong practices that having and it's called a salary study, because I just did it on a board, where they will go in, they will come, go through the salaries and stuff like that. That is where I will offer, I'm sorry, council member. But again, going into the individual personalities, what people individual, that is, we really need to tighten it up. I will offer that.
I really appreciate that. Thank you for that point. Those are my questions. Councilman Jones, you're the only one left on the list. You got another 15
you
minutes.
did a good job talking about that. It was an issue when we came in 3 years ago. This was a subject matter because the pay and the quality of pay for our EAs, I think, was like 30-some thousand, and before that, I can recall we were paying them $21,000 years ago. And that's when I was first on council, maybe 21, maybe 25,000. I'm not sure, I could be off, but I know it was in the 20s.
Madam Chair, just to respond, when I started as a member of council in 1995, members, our executive assistants were not on payroll. So you paid your EA directly out of your reimbursement.
Oh, wow.
So it was about two, maybe 3 years later that they were on the payroll.
I see.
And it
what
was-
was the pay, do you know?
It probably was about between 37 and 41, I believe.
No, I remember paying Dorothy 25,000.
Not,
And so, now maybe my memory's off.
Would you allow me a point on that very briefly?
Yes.
You know what, clerk? That just did a light bulb for me. I now understand why we keep being here. We have a whole thing in America where if you've been through hardship, you make the next generation after you be through hardship. You say, I had to go through it, and so you have to go through it too. And we have the long history. I mean, you have been on this council. We have so many staff who've been on this council. There is like culture in this building. And if the culture used to be that council members were always making this choice between the ward and their EAs, it's no wonder that, it's only really recently that we've even moved away from that. So probably to people's views who have a long history, they think, boy, we are great to our EAs. We know we treat them so well compared to this. And I'm going to put in my vote that we still haven't gone far enough. And that seems like a horrible
Agreed.
position to put your EA in back then. and it's a bad position now. So that just gave me a light bulb moment. Thank you for that, and thank you for allowing me the point, Council.
Oh, anytime, Madam Chairwoman. The issue is, at the end of the day, people need to be paid measurement to the work that they do. And I know my EA is working all the time. And the demands of the public is more greater than it has ever been before. And as I sit here today, I feel like for every year I serve on council is equivalent to 4 years of stress and pressure. I have a whole lot more different experience way back in time, and I know that things were not so flowery in the Cleveland in the last decades in terms of being under consistent fiscal issues. And it's good to see the light at the end of the tunnel, but I agree with Stephanie House-Jones as it relates to what's the best practices, what is your EAs being paid across the hall. And I know that some people are getting paid $76,000 and $80,000 now to be assistants or executive assistants. So one of the challenges we have, and we've been talking about this in the downsizing of Cleveland City Council, is that when you look at our county and the 59 cities that's in Cuyahoga County, half of them have less than the population size we are talking about trying to get to, 25. So half of the populations in these cities are under 20,000. And they have 5 council members and 1 mayor. We represent 25,000 people, and it's just us. And then the person that's next to us, and then that's our EA, and then the mayor. But the mayor's so busy he can't come to every single neighborhood, and so we are absolutely on the hook for everything in our neighborhoods and our communities today. So having, and I'm making the argument, having a EA that is paid based upon the current market space, best practices, are significant and important, and I agree with Ms. House, leaving the personalities out of it, and giving us the tools that we need to have, especially in neighborhoods on the east side, to be successful. And that would be very helpful, and I'm appreciative if we can do that expeditiously and look at that. Now the question is, how fast can we do it, and can we add it onto this budget moving forward in the next budget period? Can we look at that now on how we get that increase for our EAs? And I've always been a fan, to my colleagues and to the chairwoman, to Ms. Britt, that we should pay our employees. You know, if people who are working here day in and day out, they need to get paid too. So we should look at best practices not only for our EAs, but also where we are commensurate in terms of the staff and what we pay them. I think that having a person who's happy at the end of the day because they're getting paid what they deserve to get paid is significant and important. And that's one of the things that I've always had a trademark: pay my employees, pay my people first, take care of my contractors, make sure they're paid before I'm paid, and make sure that, and I've even went out of my way to make sure that people who didn't get paid got paid before I paid myself. And so I'm really a principle on the proposition that if you do a hard days of work, you should be properly paid for it. And so I would say we should do a best practices across the seams, because there's people who are working here, and I've talked to some of them, and you know, I know what they make, and I just think they should make more because they do so much work. And and then I'm appreciative of the work that they do. And I want to say, at the end of the day, I'm very appreciative of you, Ms. Britt. Now, I've told you that on a number of occasions. I come in your office and I said, thank you for being here. And then telling you, I don't want you to retire, you know, because I'd heard some rumors. Now, I don't want you to start coughing. I want you to stay here if it's God's will. I appreciate what your staff does and everything that you bring to the table to assist us as council members. But those are the 2 points that are important to me: production in terms of getting the communications out into my neighborhood, and making sure that the folks who do the work for us, we take care of them. Thank Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilman. I really appreciate your comments. I did see Councilwoman Gray walk in. We are at the end of our meeting about the city council budget. So I did just want to give you a chance. Do you have any questions for the clerk? Oh, great. Well, you fielded a lot of questions from 17. You have 17 people and a bunch of others to keep happy, so thank you very much. And with that, I will gavel out our committee of the whole related to the operations of the Cleveland City Council budget.